Hello dear students, good morning. I welcome you all in today's lecture of managerial economics. Today we are starting our lecture from the theory of demand. As we know that the business firm always wants to maximize his profit. So for taking managerial decisions, the business firm must keep in mind about the demand coming from the consumer side. So first let me define the concept of demand. This is the definition of demand. It refers to the willingness and ability of consumers to purchase a given quantity of a good or service at a given point in time. So demand means that willingness and ability of consumers to purchase a given quantity of a good or service at a given point in time. In a common language, demand means desire. In a common language, demand means desire. But this concept is very narrow. In economics, demand doesn't mean only desire. In economics, demand means willingness and ability of consumers. So desire or willingness, these are the most important words. Willingness means desire to get something, but ability means purchasing power. So demand means the willingness and ability of consumers to purchase a given quantity of a good or service at a given point in time. It means that, for example, if a consumer wants to get something, if he just desires to get something, so it doesn't mean that it is demand in economics. For example, I want to get a cell phone. This is my desire. I want to buy a car. This is my willingness. This is my desire to get a car. So for the demand, we need purchasing power. If the consumer is just willing to get something without having any money, it means we have no demand in economics. Okay, in general language, in common language, people are using demand as a desire. So I mean, if someone wants to get something without having any money, in economics we will not call it as a demand. For example, if one have a purchasing power means money. If a consumer have no money and he is desiring to get something, it means that particular consumer having no demand for that commodity or service. So in economics, demand refers two things. It is the combination of two words, willingness and ability of consumers. Means if the consumer is having money, he can buy something. But let me put it differently. In the first case, if the consumer wants to get something, means he is having desire to get something without money, it means that particular consumer is having no demand. If the consumer is having money, on the other hand, if the consumer is having money but he is not desiring to get something else, still that particular consumer is having no demand. So it means that demand is the combination of willingness of a consumer to purchase something and ability of a consumer to pay for that particular commodity. So we can write it as demand is equal to willingness of a consumer plus purchasing power of a consumer. It means that in economics, for a demand, there are two essential aspects, there are two essential elements. The first one is willingness of a consumer, desire of a consumer. If the consumer desires to get something, to get a particular good or a particular service, so this is the first important element. The second important element is known as the purchasing power of a consumer. If the consumer is having no money in his pocket and he is desiring to get something, still it is not a demand for that particular consumer. So for the demand, willingness and purchasing power are both complementary elements. For example, if the willingness of a consumer is to get a car, for example, a particular consumer is wishing to have a BMW car. This is his willingness, but his income is, which we denoted in economics from Y. He is having zero income, mean no income, and he is just desiring to have a BMW car. It is not a demand for that particular consumer. Similarly, if that particular consumer is having money, for example, he is having $1 million. This is his pocket money. If the consumer is having $1 million amount in his pocket and he is not desiring to have a BMW car, still it is known as no demand. So for a demand, we must have the purchasing power as well as willingness of a consumer. So if a consumer having willingness to buy something, to get something, as well as he is having the purchasing power, the money to get that particular commodity, so it will be known as demand. Let me repeat the definition again. It refers to the willingness and ability of consumer to purchase a given quantity of a good or service. It means that demand may be for a good, for example, cell phone, car, pen, book, etc. It means that the consumer is willing to get a good. Maybe it is a cell phone, a car, a pen, a book, and so on. And similarly, the demand may be to have a service, for example, like professions. That is medical services, educational services, laboring, etc. Then we say that purchase of a given quantity of a good or service at a given point in time. Time unit may be, for example, a day, a week, a month, a year. So, demand means the willingness and ability of consumers to purchase a given quantity of a good or service at a given point in time. So, this was the basic concept of demand. But as we know that there is an inverse relationship between price of a commodity and quantity demanded of a consumer. So, we have experienced that as the prices of a commodity goes up, the demand for that, the quantity demanded for that particular commodity goes down. For example, quantity demanded and price of a particular commodity. If price we denote it from the letter P. If price of a commodity increases, if price of a commodity increases, it means that quantity demanded of that particular commodity decreases. That is, we denoted quantity demanded of a commodity by QX. So, it means that if price of a commodity increases, quantity demanded of a particular commodity decreases, or if price decreases, quantity demanded of a commodity increases. As we have noticed in the market that if price of a commodity increases, so the consumers are willing to buy less of that particular commodity. It means that lower is the demand for that particular commodity. Or if price of a particular commodity decreases in a market, the consumers are willing to buy more units of that particular commodity. It means that price and quantity demanded having inverse relationship. There is an inverse relationship. This implies that there is an inverse relationship between the price and the quantity demanded. It means that there is an inverse relationship. Inverse means negative. Inverse means negative. So, the relationship between the price and the quantity demanded for a particular commodity is negative. If one goes up, the second will go down. If one goes down, the second goes up. So, I mean, this is a negative relationship found between price of a commodity and quantity demanded for that particular commodity. So, The inverse relationship between price and quantity demanded of a good is known as the law of demand. The inverse relationship the inverse relationship the inverse the inverse relationship between price and quantity demanded for a particular commodity is known as the law of demand. So, according to the law of demand, there is an inverse relationship between price and quantity demanded for a particular commodity. That is, symbolically, if P increases, mean if the price of a commodity increases, the quantity demanded decreases, or if price decreases, quantity demanded increases. This negative relationship or inverse relationship between price and quantity demanded is known as the law of demand. We can represent the law of demand by a downward sloping curve. As we have seen here that the relationship between price of a commodity and quantity demanded is negative, is inverse. It means that the demand curve will be sloping downward. So, the downward sloping line, the demand curve will be a downward sloping line. That is, if we want to draw a demand curve, this is price. We are denoting price from capital P in economics, and quantity demanded, QD or QX. So, on the horizontal axis we have quantity demanded of a particular commodity, and on the vertical axis we have price of the particular commodity. For example, if price of a pen if the original price of a pen was 5 TL Turkish lira, if the original price of a pen was 5 Turkish lira and quantity demanded from the consumer side was, for example, 30 units. It means that if the price of a pen was at 5 Turkish lira and the consumers were willing to buy 30 units of the commodity, which is a pen. So this is the original price. We can call it PA, original price, and this is the original quantity QA. Now suppose if the price of that particular commodity changes, for example, new price is 10 Turkish lira. If new price of a pen is 10 Turkish lira, so demand will be 20 units. Suppose because price of this particular commodity decreases and quantity increases and quantity demanded decreases. So it means that if the price of a pen increases from 5 Turkish lira to 10 Turkish lira, so the quantity demanded of pen will be decreased from 30 units to 20 units. So this is the original price. We are denoting the original price from PA, and this was the original quantity QA. This is the new price. For example, I am denoting the new price with PB and quantity demanded QB. So on the vertical axis we will draw the price. So the price was 5, this was 5 Turkish lira, and this is 10 Turkish lira. Quantity demanded was 20 and 30. So when the price was 10, like let me write it as price of A, price of B, quantity of A, quantity of B. If the price is 5 Turkish lira, the demand is 30 units. If the price is 10 Turkish lira, the demand is 20 units now. So 5 TL is the original price. This is PA and this is PB. QA. This is QB. So when the price was 5 Turkish lira, the quantity demanded was 30 units. Like we can draw the line with dotted lines. So let me call it point A. When the price was 10, quantity demanded was 20. When the price was 10, let me call it point B. If we draw a line touching both these points, this line is known as demand curve. We denote it from DD. DD DD is the demand curve. Look at this curve. This curve is having downward slope. The slope of this demand curve is a downward. So it means that if price increases, quantity demanded decreases, or if price decreases, quantity demanded increases. Graphically, if the price of a commodity will increase, the quantity demand for that particular commodity will decrease, and if the price of a commodity decreases, mean from 10 to 5, there will be an increase in demand from consumers. So this is known as the sloping demand line, the downward sloping demand line. So it means that the demand curve has a negative slope. The demand curve is having a negative slope. If the slope is negative, it means the coefficient value of the ratio will be negative. That is, I will discuss it later in the elasticity concept. That is, change in quantity due to change in P will be less than 0, means it will be negative. I will discuss it in detail after this point. So this was the concept of the law of demand. Now we are discussing about the individual demand for a particular commodity. An individual demand individual means a particular consumer. individual means a particular consumer. So, the demand for a commodity arises from the consumer willingness and ability to purchase the commodity. The consumer demand theory postulates that the quantity demanded of a consumer depends on the price of a commodity, the income of the consumer, the price of related goods, and the taste of the consumer. The demand theory the demand theory postulates that the quantity demanded of a commodity depends on the price of the commodity, the income of the consumer, the price of related goods, and the taste of the consumer. According to the demand theory, quantity demanded of a commodity depends on the price of the commodity, the income of the consumer, the price of related goods, and the taste of the consumer. Related good means substitutes plus complements. In the next session, we will discuss about an individual demand in detail. Thank you so much for coming. Thank you.